What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Grid Encore. I'm Ben Schneider alongside, as always, Brandon Crossan. Brandon, how's it going tonight? Good to see you again.
Hey, Ben. Good to see you, too. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Grid Encore. It is indeed a Motor Monday, and I've given up on having the window fully open here in the studio with the summer solstice either coming up or it's already passed. I can't remember which way it goes. Anyway, it's looked terrible in here the past couple of weeks, and I can bear it no longer. So going half shade, and hopefully that's going to make things a little better.
Looks all good on my end, and yeah, I can understand. I mean, you're probably dealing with the heat a little bit worse than I am here. The thing is, being up here just north of Boston, a lot of these homes don't have a central cooling system or AC, so I'm kind of on my own here. Don't have a good window to necessarily put a window unit in, so I'm just trying to tough it out with some fans right now, but we'll see. Maybe once we get into the middle of July, might need to figure out a different solution there, but not too bad today. I think a high of only 80 degrees or so not too bad. Yeah.
Here's the trade for down here. We don't have snow shovels. Never a need for snow shovels.
There you go. Yeah. Although we had a more mild winter this year again, so we could have been worse on that front as well. We'll see what this coming winter brings, but still several months out from that. Plenty of racing to recap this weekend and in the months ahead as we continue to track these championship battles and these races. We got Xfinity and trucks at Nashville. ARCA was at Berlin, and then we'll give you a brief update on F3 and F2 in Austria this weekend as well. But first, we've got some breaking news to get to. Before we do that, though, as always, want to give a shout out to our Patreon supporters, Colin, Deschelle, Mark, Robin, David, and Matthew. Thank you so much for continuing to support this motorsports media outlet. Your support goes a long way. It's what helped allow our own Joe Samniego and Nicole Fry to get to the track back at Portland International Raceway this weekend for Formula E coverage. And go check out their playlist of all their interviews and coverage if you haven't checked that out already. But it's thanks in large part to people like these six wonderful individuals. If you like what you see tonight, if you like what you see all throughout the week here for our Grid Network programming, you can consider joining them, or if you'd rather make a one-time donation instead, you can visit the Buy Me a Coffee link in the description box below, or donate through YouTube's Super Chat feature as well. And as always, feel free to follow us on all our social media platforms and subscribe to us right here on our YouTube channel. Now, just a few hours before we went on the air, we got some major breaking news out of AM Racing. Hailie Deegan is out of a number 15 Ford for the Chicago Street Race coming up this weekend. Two-time Cup Series champion Joey Logano will be taking over that seat as he fills in for his first Xfinity Series start in nearly 5 years. And we have a press release out from AM Racing, and this is from team president Wade Moore saying the level of competition in the Xfinity Series is as competitive as it's ever been. It is our goal at AM Racing to field a competitive race team through our technical alliance with Stewart-Haas Racing and provide any of our drivers the best equipment and opportunity to be successful on track each weekend. With that being said, we haven't had the success on track that we were hoping for in the first half of the season. When the opportunity to have Joey in the car at Chicago became a possibility, we felt we needed to take advantage of a knowledge and feedback that a two-time NASCAR Cup Series champion could provide to our team's growth. And Matt Weaver tweeting this excerpt from the press release out and also noting in a follow-up tweet, objectively, the entry needs points just to be safe to make races over the summer. And that is certainly true as we get ready for the Chicago Street Race coming up this weekend. And John Bender noting here as well, 43 entries for Xfinity for the Chicago Street Race. So no guarantee that Deegan would have made the field with how low that car is in points. Of course, no guarantee Joey Logano makes the field either. The amount of points isn't going to change just because a two-time Cup Series champion is in that car. But you would expect Logano to have a better shot at making it on speed than Deegan would, given how her season has gone here. So Brandon, I just want to go to you first here and get your initial reaction. What is your reaction? What are your thoughts on AM Racing making this decision to bench Hailie Deegan for at least one race coming up here at Chicago?
It truly is my reaction, Ben, because I haven't really been in the news cycle today, just kind of been in La La Land and other different places. Man, that AM Racing is this decision. Hailie Deegan now 110. Am I coming out?
It was kind of cutting out a little bit. I don't know if you just want to restart that thought here.
Yeah. Taking her out, and we didn't really see too much of last year because of the downpour of rain in the Chicago area. this you told me before the show. This I'm going to say this is exactly like 2018 when we learned, or 2019, 2018, we discovered that Trevor Bayne was going to be booted out of the Roush Fenway car, and that was just a kind of a dump on everyone. Like, wow, but just taking your full-time driver out. But I can't help but have the season those points.
It looks like we may be losing Brandon here, so I'll give him a second to try to reconnect his internet. But I get what he's saying, and when he and I discussed right before we came on the air here, talking about Trevor Bayne and it being a similar situation to 2018 when Matt Kenseth replaced him, and that seeming to come out of nowhere. Just a situation where you look at a driver's performance and you have the opportunity to bring a veteran in. I think absolutely, the Deegan fans even have to admit that it makes perfect sense to put a Cup champion in the car if you have an opportunity. And people who watch this show, who watch any of our grid programming, who read my writing for lastcar.info, certainly know that I am not a fan of Cup Series drivers coming into the lower divisions. But I think in this instance, it is certainly an understandable decision on the part of AM Racing, and you can't help but wonder if Joey Logano goes out and has a strong run this weekend. It'll be even more telling based on the driver's performance so far this year. And that press release did note there have been some questions. How much of an alliance is there really? Is it basically SHR equipment? Is it just a technical alliance of some sort, or what's the deal there? Certainly getting some irrefutable proof that it is, in fact, an alliance with SHR. So that's even more damning, in my opinion, for Deegan's lack of performance this year. But I will say this, it did seem to work for AJ Allmendinger at Red Bull in 2008. He got sat out for a few races, came back and was much stronger. Ricky Stenhouse Jr., if you want to bring up another Roush example, got sat down in 2010 in the Xfinity Series, or Nationwide at the time, and came back and rebounded very well from that, had a third-place run at the summer race at Daytona. So it has worked in the past. If Hailie Deegan can take this opportunity as a wake-up call to maybe sit on the pit box this weekend, learn from a two-time Cup champion, and see if she can take any of that and use that for momentum for the rest of the year and not use it as a downer in terms of her morale, I think that would certainly be the best case scenario. Certainly what AM Racing is hoping for, putting a Cup Series driver in that car. And it looks like we have Brandon back here. Brandon, sorry about that. I know it's a terrible feeling.
Well, I think it was on my end for sure, and it looks like I'm being replaced by Joey Logano too for this episode. I'll be expecting him to come in here shortly. No, you're making some good points there, and I was able to hear you while I was out, just for the majority of that. So I was listening in. Yeah, Hailie Deegan being on the pit box, that's got to be a weird feeling, and I see that they have to do this. It's necessary to do make some sort of change. I just, and you talked about the precedent of how Jay Allmendinger on the other side. I just hope it does the same for her, and I wonder how much of an improvement we may see with Joey Logano in the AM Racing equipment, if any. This will really be the true test. You got a two-time Cup Series champion. This will really be a true test of, okay, where is AM Racing's equipment? If you're putting the quote best of the best in there, it's at a street course. This is the only street course that they're going to all year, so it's a very unique kind of place. Might look at Joey Logano's results last year on the Cup side and see where this correlates. I'm curious to see if we will see a big improvement just because there's a different driver in the car.
And I'll also note as well, Brett Moffitt in the AM Racing car in this race last year finished in fourth. Of course, it was a very strange situation with the weather postponing the race, and ultimately they called it before they even got to the halfway point because of the logistics of trying to put a street course race on, sort of an unprecedented situation for NASCAR. So hopefully the weather cooperates this weekend. But you're exactly right, Brandon. I think this is going to be very telling if Logano, you would certainly expect him to, I would think, at least finish in the top 20 If he's any worse than that, then I think you really look at, whatever equipment AM Racing is getting from Stewart Haas or whatever alliance they have, it's clearly not a very good one. But if Logano can go out and contend for a top 10, top 5, maybe even be up there in contention for the win, I don't know how else you read that other than, well, it clearly hasn't been the equipment this entire time. But again, I think sometimes being sat out, being benched for a race or two can wake up a driver. And, if anything, you think it might be a detriment to their morale or confidence or whatever. I think you've seen that with Logan Sargent a little bit based on what happened in Australia. But the deal with Sargent's a little bit different because that was him being replaced on a weekend where it was his teammate that actually made the mistake. So a bit of a different dynamic there. Of course, like the press release said, it has not been the start of a year that anybody at that team wanted. We've talked about it on this show before, just in the last couple of weeks. We had Joy Tomlinson put that article or column out at Front Stretch wondering, should Deegan go back to the ARCA series to try to, improve in her performance and results? Certainly that would be, I think, a much more enjoyable experience than what this has been. Twitter user actually pointed out something. I haven't been able to verify this, but it appeared that Haley and Rhett Jones Racing followed each other on Instagram this weekend. You can make of that what you will. Maybe Deegan would get some races in that 30 car. Of course, they've been running some Xfinity races as well with Noah Gragson, so who knows what might come of that there. And we have some comments in the chat room here from Alex Fleener asking, does Deegan maybe buy out a driver in a lower car or the 53 Gase car, even though it's a Toyota? Well, I think if Deegan buys out that ride, Joey Gase's team, they've run all three manufacturers this year, depending on who's been in the car. It's been a Ford when Frankie Muniz has been in. He's a Ford performance driver, but it's been a Toyota or Chevrolet at other races this year. So if she were to do that, I would think that they would rebadge that entry as a Ford, but I don't know if Deegan has the sponsors or funding or partners in place to be able to do that on such short notice. We'll see. It would keep her playoff eligible, I suppose, although with how she's been performing, it would probably just take a shock win on a lightning strike, rain shortened situation or a drafting sort of deal at Daytona. Who knows? But that would be the only reason I would think Deegan would want to try to continue to enter this race and buy out a ride. I don't know that that's going to happen, though. And Alex mentioning here as well, Gase cars are split over manufacturers. So maybe that would be an option. But again, as John points out, 43 entries for this street race. There were no guarantees with the AM Racing ride that she was going to be able to qualify for this race, let alone Gase car. We'll see what happens, if anything. But I've got a feeling it would probably be best for her to be on the pit box and listen into the team communications with Joey and listen to what a two-time champion has in terms of feedback and what he can provide to the team. Because again, as much as I'm not a fan of Cup drivers racing in Xfinity and trucks, I think in a situation like this, if it's well within the rules, it is certainly understandable that this would be an opportunity that AM Racing couldn't pass up.
Yeah, and AM Racing also obviously believes that they can finish, that they deserve to finish better than where Haley Deegan has been finishing when she does finish. And also, what comes to mind too is also the folding of Stewart Haas Racing at the end of the year. Their technical alliance with them, they've got to be realizing that they're on the market for, okay, who are we going to align with next? We need to show ourselves out in the market that we are someone worthy of aligning with and growing with. And I think about the two Haas factory team that they're going to put to keep Ford alive and the Xfinity side of things and the one in Cup. You got to know that they want to be a part of that too. And the performance they put up, I mean, they can look at numbers too. The performance they put up in the first half of the year, that's not really a good audition for where you're going to align yourself with next.
Yeah, no doubt. And that's a great point as well. We'll see what happens with the Haas charters. And we know one's going to be with the Haas factory team. And then obviously the Xfinity, I guess the number of entries won't change because whether it's the 00 and 98 or two new numbers or whatever the case may be, those cars will still be out on track. They'll just be fully Haas factory branded without Tony Stewart's involvement, at least. So we'll see. Lots to still consider here for 25. But I think now more than ever, with the news that we've gotten here just a few hours ago, Haley Deegan out of the 15 AM Racing Ford for the Chicago Street Race in the Xfinity Series. I think you can certainly say her career is at a crossroads at this point. And so I think some difficult conversations are going to need to be had. Because this is certainly not news that I expected to hear this afternoon, but I can't say it's surprising news either, given the circumstances and where she is in points right now. So we'll keep an eye on that entry this weekend. We'll see what Joey Logano can do. Brandon, I don't know if you want to follow up quickly, and then we'll move on.
Yeah, I mean, she's been in the news feed for the past couple of weeks, and not for the best reasons. So we're hoping the best for her career. It definitely is at crossroads. There's no guessing game there. We just hope it turns out for the best.
All right, we'll leave it there. Before we move on to this week's Xfinity race, Brandon, since you were not on wrap-up last night, it was a late wrap-up, certainly an unusual wrap-up show. Quintuple overtime in the Cup Series, your home race, Nashville Superspeedway.
Thanks.
Do you have any brief thoughts, or you want to give a reaction to the insanity that we saw? Ironically, we'll keep Joey Logano in the news for this show here. He less than 24 hours ago, taking the checkered flag, somehow, some way, finding a way to save enough fuel at the end there. Zane Smith nearly pulling off one of the biggest upsets we've seen in recent Cup memory. What was your reaction to the chaos and quintuple overtime finish that we saw?
Yeah, I didn't realize that it was actually 5 overtimes, the quintuple mark, which NASCAR was very proud to put out on X and all their social media platforms. A new record has been added to the history books. 5 overtimes, most in NASCAR Cup Series history. There's some stats that you may not want to be so proud of, but I can't blame them for using they've got a stat, they need to use it, and this is the path they've chosen. They need to market it as such. And some people prefer watching the game of, oh man, is my driver gonna lose his fuel gauge before the end of the race? Can he make it to the end? And just having a mess after a mess after a mess 5 times over until he finally got the superb fuel economy that is Team Penske, and getting Joey Logano to get into the playoff picture. Some people enjoy that, and I'm not gonna tell you that you're not allowed to enjoy that as a NASCAR fan if that's your thing. And I can see the token of that, where that this in reality was much better than for a fan being there than maybe just coming across the line with a yellow, like, all right, well, that's it, gigs up, go home. I know I'm setting off a fire here, but you've probably already let that flame fly last night, I hope. So hopefully there's no more bullets for me, right?
It was, well, yeah, I mean, I'm glad we didn't go on the air right after the finish, and I'm glad that obviously it's a bit of a conflict of interest for Kobe to talk NASCAR these days. So it was just me on the wrap-up show giving my thoughts, didn't have anybody to bounce off of, and so I just went through a quick brief recap and rundown, and didn't have the opportunity to get as animated as I maybe would have liked to. And now that it's been almost 24 hours, I won't do that here either. But I will say this: if this is not vindication, if this is not the catalyst for people recognizing that maybe unlimited attempts is pure insanity, then I don't know what is. Now, I know that this is a new record. I know that this doesn't happen every week. I understand that most of the time we rarely go past double overtime. But it clearly, and when you're running into fuel mileage problems, we saw it with Larson running out, stacking the field up, Kyle Busch getting taken out in a crash. But why was Kyle Busch allowed to regain all those positions that he lost on whatever it was, the first overtime? There were 5 overtime finishes and restarts to keep track of, so forgive me if I'm messing the order up slightly here, but Busch was allowed to get all his spots back, which I credit to Jeff Burton in the booth for calling that out, because that was, I appreciate.
And if he won the race, it'd be irate.
Oh yeah. I appreciate that Burton was, didn't feel the need to stifle his true thoughts and opinions there, and that he was willing to tell it like it was, because it was ridiculous. I don't understand. I mean, Kyle Busch is going to take it, I'm sure. It's been a difficult stretch for him. Now, fortunately, for the integrity of the results, it didn't matter, because he got caught up in another wreck anyway. But you had that happen. You almost had the lowest ranked full-time driver in points, maybe the lowest ranked chartered car in owners points. I don't know if that's true off the top of my head. I know it's certainly down there. the 15 and 16 using a rotation of drivers. But I mean, talk about throwing, a major wrench into the playoff picture, because when Justin Haley stole that win at Daytona all those years ago, you still have a top 30 rule. So obviously Haley wasn't running for cup points. That wasn't an issue. But Spire, Bob Pockris was updating every week, like, how close is that 77 to 30th place in the Owners' Championship? Because that would have, again, I'm thankful. I love the underdog as much as anybody, but Zane Smith, with how he's running this year, no disrespect, but I think that would have just been a waste of a playoff spot too, given what got us there. And I don't know. I mean, I feel like, and I've talked to fans that I disagree with on this about these issues here. I know that we're in a new era. We're never going back to Bob Lafford's Winston Cup point system. We're never going back to a full season championship points format in all likelihood. But I would be willing to compromise. If the option was keep it how we have it now or go back to 2004 to 2013, I'm taking the latter of those every time. I understand that today's fans, a fan born in 2004 doesn't know any different. We've had some sort of green, white checker or overtime rule or regulation in place throughout all three series for 20 years now. I understand that the fans of today more than ever want green flag finishes at all realistic and reasonable cost here. But you cannot allow something like this to be a possibility, because it's just absolute insanity. And it racks up the repair bills for these teams as well. I mean, how many torn up race cars did we go through in the extra 30 plus laps, 40 plus miles that we added onto the race distance there? Just not a fan of it. So I would have no problem saying, it's the insert your company name here, 300 or 400, and that's where we're ending it. Period, end of story, no matter what the circumstances are. But I would be willing to compromise and say you get one attempt. And if you cannot, if the so-called 40 best drivers in the world cannot finish the race in more than one attempt, then too bad. I'm sorry. The races end under caution sometimes. That was what was so ironic, to your point, Brandon, about them posting that graphic. NASCAR always loves this, and no disrespect to whoever's the social admin behind that, because I'm sure that whoever that person is, they have a job. They're being told to post this or post that. And so it's not an attack on them at all. Don't go, crying to the social admin. But the fact that somebody at NASCAR was willing to say, hey, look, we have the best drivers in the world. So anyway, we set a new record last night because said best drivers in the world couldn't complete one green flag lap until the 5th attempt at the end of the race. So I don't know.
I think a caveat needs to be put there. The best drivers in the world at the stock car discipline.
Well, that's true.
They don't say that because they don't need to. They're NASCAR. They can just say the best drivers in the world to sell their product. But we know it's the best stock car discipline drivers in the world. And really, get kind of put in a box whenever you give them a chance to steal the race. And I mean, what do you expect to happen? We to get to 5 overtimes, it's not that hard to believe, because I mean, you're gonna put if they see open track in front of them, they're gonna take it every single time, because that's their job on the line. That's a playoff spot on the line.
Sure. Yeah.
And you put them in a box like that. Even iRacing knows on their official races, you only get 2 chances at an overtime.
All right. Looks like Brandon might be.
Well,
looks like Brandon might be cutting out again here, but we good? Looks like you might be back.
Yeah, am I here? Okay. Yes. Where's the last part you left me?
You're talking about iRacing. iRacing only allows 2 attempts.
Yeah, even iRacing, they know better with all these online competitors, that you only need 2 attempts, and then if you can't do 2 attempts, that's it. We're going to tug you to the yellow.
Yeah. I mean,
that's an official simulation of iRacing, by the way.
And think about
of NASCAR.
Yes, and if iRacing, sorry guys, a video game, it's not real. It's a simulation.
Yeah.
It is by definition a game over video format. If they are saying we're not going to put up with more than 2 of these, then a series that has real life financial implications for these teams, if they wreck their race cars or if they tear stuff up, I don't like it. I don't like the idea of unlimited attempts. I think one attempt is more than good enough. Fans should be grateful that they're getting that, because it didn't used to be that way. So you want to get a green flag finish, we'll try for you one time. And if they can't do that, then don't be mad at the sanctioning body. Be mad at the best drivers in the world for not being able to behave enough to at least get to the white flag. I mean, because that's the thing. It's not like, oh, we got to run 2 laps. They couldn't even get to the white flag. I mean, they all they have to do is take the white, and then it's an official attempt, and that's it. They couldn't even get 1 lap in.
They were so close at one time. They were so close to getting to the white.
They were, yeah.
It's all circumstantial every time, and then there's always that one car, and most of those yellows were just because guys were running out of fuel.
Yeah,
and just getting shunted because you're pushing it to the limit, and you're not thinking about the guy in front of you running out of fuel. I mean, it's little things, and it's to me, it's not always because they lack talent. And what we saw last night, the majority of those overtimes having to restack is not because they ran out of talent. It's because people ran out of fuel.
Yeah. And again, I know Brandon backstage, you brought up the truck finale Phoenix last year. You had to Zane Smith, I think it was, miss a shift on a restart that stacks everybody up. So,
and I thought that was the record breaker.
Yeah,
in my mind, because it felt like it took forever.
Yeah, it felt like more than 4. I think based on what led up to it with the whole time.
It felt like 4 hours going into overtime.
Yeah.
We thought the truck series was over that night. Man, we thought it was done.
Yeah, no doubt. All right, let's catch up on the chat here, and then we will move on to cover this weekend's races. Adam says, Brandon, maybe thinking about attending the NASCAR action at Nashville next year. So maybe you two can run into each other if you go back there, Brandon. We'll see.
Every other year, I think, is what we're doing now. Drink lots of water. Lots of water.
Yes.
It is stupid hot. That's all I can say.
Yeah. Alex Fleener saying, as someone at the race, I was all for it. I don't think one bad overtime is worth the fire that people give it. I'd rather finish under green than finish under caution. Well, hey, fair enough.
I'm saying.
I understand. As much as I strongly disagree with it, I do understand the line of thinking. And I'm not sitting here saying, oh, I love when it finishes under caution. I love when you never know when the race is going to end, and NASCAR can just end the race at the push of a button. I don't like it. I'm just saying, I think from a sporting integrity standpoint, it makes more sense than just arbitrarily extending the race to a distance that we didn't agree to. And again, last night more than ever, teams calculate their fuel out to think, okay, we have enough to make it to the end and we're going to be good on fuel. And then nobody has any idea when the race is going to end because it's dependent on these guys getting to the white flag, and they couldn't do it.
Yeah, so it throws strategy out the window, and it's terrible for the person watching on TV, Alex, but for you being in the stands, I bet it was a blast. All 5 of those overtimes, I bet it was a complete blast for that sold-out crowd, because Kyle Busch spinning out on the front stretch and getting out, the crowd was just going bananas. At least that's what it sounded like from USA, which we had to switch over by that point.
Yes. Yeah, that was true too. We did have the
which was a NASCAR.
Sorry, Brad, you cut out there again. What was that? Okay, we'll give Brandon a second. I think the internet's cutting in and out again for him. But Alex says again, plus I think you have to acknowledge that Larson was responsible for going beyond 2. You can't stay there out of gas without punishment beyond results there. Yeah, well, but again, that goes back to the playoff conversation there, because I don't know. Maybe Larson would have played it more safe, and in a straight up points battle for a championship would have come in to fuel the car. But he knows he's got multiple wins already. He got his playoff waiver. He knows he's going to the playoffs. You might as well go try to steal another win and get more playoff points. So this is why I don't like the argument when people say, oh, so-and-so, if we had this format in 2006, Denny Hamlin would have finished 3rd at Homestead and he would have been the champion as a rookie. He would not have been the champion as a rookie. Or if he had, he would have had to win that Homestead race to do it in all likelihood, because the racing would have been different, because strategies would have been different based on the format these drivers and teams are racing under. And because of that, the results would have been different. The points would have been different. Who knows what would have happened? So these people that say Jeff Gordon's actually a 7-time champion, Jimmy Johnson's only a 3rd-time champion. I'm sorry, I don't buy that. As much as I prefer the format that I prefer, I think that, I can't say any of these champions are undeserving because everybody races under the same set of rules in the same format. So
yeah, that's completely debunked. It's been debunked for years now. They race totally different under this system.
All right, we got Brandon's audio back. The camera is still appears to be frozen though. So just a heads up there. Maybe try turning your camera on and off, Brandon. But we'll try to get you fully back here. In the meantime, let's finish up going through the chat. Adam says he agrees with me. Give it one shot for overtime. Didn't bother me about finishing under caution back in the day. Yeah, but again, I know Adam's a little bit older than our generation of race fans here. So he understands and knows what it's like. And again, I think a lot of it depends on the driver and the circumstances. I know that 1998 Daytona 500 was certainly a popular win with Dale Earnhardt finally winning the 500. I don't think too many fans were complaining about finishing under caution on that day. But then a few years later, Michael Waltrip beat Dale Earnhardt Jr. at Daytona in the summer race. And then Jeff Gordon did again at Talladega. And, Earnhardt Nation, they were happy about the first. They weren't happy about the second and third of those examples I just pointed out. So I think a lot of it depends on context beyond that. But, again, just from a neutral fan's perspective, I wouldn't love to have it every week, but, it's life. It happens every once in a while.
Yeah. Are we back on video? Are we good?
Potentially. Screen's not pixelated, but you're not moving at the moment. So.
Oh, that's not good.
Must just be one of those nights here. We'll try to soldier on and do the best we can. But as long as we've got your audio, that's better than nothing here. Alex finally saying, I will concede that the lower series, especially trucks, needs to be restricted. Well, I would be curious, Alex, what would that restriction be? Would you say only 1/10? Would you go up to 3, which has been the restriction in the past? Maybe you can follow up here in chat and we can come back to that a little bit later. All right. Let's see. Hopefully Brandon his internet can hang in here and we can go into a discussion about the races this weekend. But John Hunter Nemechek won again, and on the subject of Cup drivers stinking up the show in Xfinity here, I know again, Brandon, probably I think this has been your argument over the years. It's not as bad as a Kyle Busch or a Cup Series champion coming in and do it. Of course, Nemechek is still pretty inexperienced when it comes to the Cup Series. Only has a couple of seasons under his belt, or maybe only one full-time season. Trying to do the math in my head here, but anyway, not nearly as experienced as some of the other drivers who race in the Xfinity Series. But I want to stick with the Cup conversation here for just a second. Obviously, it's a good momentum boost for Nemechek to get an Xfinity win, but he and Eric Jones, obviously Jones had the injuries to sideline him for a couple races, but we thought Legacy Motor Club was going to come in with this new support from Toyota and the alliance that they have with the other Toyota teams, and that would elevate their performance. It simply hasn't happened. Why do you think Nemechek and Jones are struggling so much right now with Legacy MC in the Cup Series?
Well, because I think it's just the first year of the Toyota alliance. I think we're expecting too much in year number one. I don't remember manufacturer switches working successfully so quickly in other instances, at least not in my personal memory. But John Hunter Nemechek is able to have so much success there with the Joe Gibbs Racing Xfinity program just because it's Joe Gibbs' Xfinity program, and it's that 20 car. It's won so much with all these different other drivers this year. You look at Ryan Truex at Dover. You look at Almirola, some other impressive things there coming out of Joe Gibbs and Xfinity, but Legacy Motor Club is just not there. And it's sad and ironic because they were picking up some speed at the end of their tenure with Chevrolet. You looked at Eric Jones, and they were doing not that bad towards the end of it, but they knew they were going to be switching to Toyota, and now it's pretty sour. But I think we're calling it too early, in my personal opinion. And I think we need to give it some time, and maybe by the end of year 2, judge that they're not there yet, or that something clearly is not working with this alliance.
Yeah, so on that note, Nemechek won at Las Vegas, has now added a second win at Nashville. Almirola won at Martinsville. Ryan Truex won at Dover, and Christopher Bell, of course, won last weekend at New Hampshire. So back-to-back for that Gibbs 20 car, like you were mentioning there, Brandon. And again, 3 of those wins have come with active Cup drivers. Obviously, Almirola, a ton of Cup Series experience for him as well. Even Ryan Truex, I think, has a year or 2 of experience with BK racing back in the day. So, again, I feel like, I try to stay as consistent as possible. I'm not even a fan of, I certainly would not be a fan of Kyle Busch getting him his 20 car like he did 15 years ago so often, and sticking up the show, stealing all those wins. But even Nemechek, I still would much rather see somebody like a Ryan Truex or an Eric Almirola get more races in that car. But I do understand that, it's a little bit of a different situation for Nemechek. He's still trying to gain experience, and this is probably a big momentum boost for him on a weekend where the Cup Series race didn't go according to plan, and the Cup Series season, to be quite honest, hasn't gone according to plan for Legacy. So, you can't understand that perspective of it here, and it is a good result for that team in the Owners' Championship fight, and Chandler Smith as well. To your point, Brandon, you get in a Gibbs Xfinity car, you are expected to be up front and competing for wins and championships, and it looks like Chandler Smith is on a path where he can do just that this year as well. So just missing out on the win to Nemechek there, but a strong run for him nonetheless. Ty Gibbs, though, let's talk about another Gibbs driver here. Frustrating day for him. Contact with Justin Allgaier kind of ruined his afternoon. You see him finishing down there in 20th place. Allgaier maintained a solid top 10 run in P8 to end his day. We know Ty Gibbs has come under fire at times for his aggression. Do you think in this instance, though, being on the other end of it, he had a right to be a little bit upset with what happened with Allgaier?
Maybe a little bit. He started on the pole, had the car to beat as far as overall speed goes. I attribute a lot of that frustration, though, Ben, just to the overall heat of the day and also of Sunday, too. That we can't underestimate how big of a storyline that was, with the cool suits failing and just the air not working in the car, and just not to mention it's 130 degrees inside that Xfinity Series car. They are driving in a literal pizza oven, and they also have to think at the high mental abilities and also use all of their energy on the wheel. It's asking a lot, and then also to ask them to play nice too. We would probably pass out before we'd play nice if we were in that same position. Yeah. So they're certainly athletes. There's no denying that, and especially when they come to Nashville. I apologize. I don't know why it gets so hot here when we decide to come to race weekend.
I would like to see this be a night race again. I think that would be just for the sake of the drivers and the fans especially. And I don't know. I wish that. I think it's better than it was at its worst, but I still wish Nashville would do a little bit more to try to provide some water or some relief for these fans who would have to sit in these bleachers and the sun beating down on them, all afternoon. It's not an enjoyable experience for them just sitting there baking in the sun. And then you have the drivers dealing with what they're dealing with, like you mentioned, Brandon. Shout out to Riley Herbst as well. I think he was one of the ones that had his cool suit malfunction, and he had to tough it out. So well done to him. A 6th place finish, just ahead of AJ Allmendinger, who looked like he might be in contention for the win had the race gone green. Looked like he was closing in on the lead. Caution came out. Everybody comes into the pits, and colleagues' pit crew lost him several spots. Allmendinger said in his post-race interview he thought that the car did not have the speed regardless, which maybe is why he only was able to get back up to 7th place in the final results. But Brandon, in your estimation, did Colleague Racing cost him a shot at the win? Did they cost him a shot at a top 2 or 3 finish at the very least on a weekend where they were ready to reset what's been a disappointing start to the year for them?
I worked with that car and Chris Rice, all of them wanting to have that fresh start and calling this their Daytona because of the year they've had so far. And I think back to how AJ Allmendinger responded back at Portland whenever we had our very own Joe Samaniego interview him. He just kept harping, thanking Colleague Racing and for the piece they give week in and week out. And it's sort of ironic and unfortunate that it may have very well been the team letting the driver down this go around, but that's just the ebb and flow of racing.
All right. Apologies for just joining us. We've had some issues with Brandon's internet tonight, but I think we got the gist of what he was saying there, talking about AJ's interview at Portland earlier this year, and that being even though he was able to come back up to a fourth place result there, having to go through a lot to get there, going to a backup car and being kind of down on his efforts. So, I guess in AJ's estimation, it hasn't all been the team. It's been the driver potentially a little bit as well. But again, normally I think a seventh place result would not be too disappointing of a finish, especially given the difficulties the colleague has had to start the year here. And I say start the year, we're already pretty much halfway through it. But, on a weekend where it looked like he might have a shot at the win, got to be frustrating to fall that far down the running order based on something that was out of his control. So hopefully colleague can rebound from that. Great opportunity coming up this weekend for both him and his teammate SVG. AJ's going to be back in the Cup race, him at 13 open car, while SVG takes over the 16. And then, of course, we'll see what they can do in the Xfinity Series race as well. We move on now to the Craftsman Truck Series, and an absolute dominant performance from Christian Eckes. Could not have been more dominant, as a matter of fact, because Eckes led every single lap of this race. Brandon, are you surprised that in an era of stage racing where strategies sometimes get thrown off with the stages and everything, that Eckes was able to accomplish this incredible feat of leading every lap in a truck race?
I would give you a Kyle Busch answer. Nope, not surprised. I mean, really, I'm not. The trucks, they just don't seem to pass at Nashville, especially if you're in the lead. And I hate that for the track, because I really want it to be well-rounded on all the series. But the truck series, unfortunately, put the goose egg, at least on my radar, as far as how the weekend went, as far as how successful the races were to enjoy, to watch. I'm sure it was fun as a driver, figuring out the biggest concrete track in America on the oval side, and figuring out how the lanes were changing and what groove to be in, especially on the slower paced trucks. But for us to watch, though, I mean, once Christian Eckes, he was mighty on those restarts every time he got it, and he didn't qualify in the front. It took him getting that first restart to get around, first start to get around Stuart Friesen, and then it was all smooth sailing from there. It didn't matter how many times he had to restart. He just had the truck to beat on the restarts, and it was able to keep a sizable gap. And it really was just a fight for second.
It was. And Daniel Dye, great run for that young driver coming out on top of that battle with Corey Heim. So let's stick with Eckes and Heim here for a second, Brandon, because that's obviously those have been the two most dominant drivers. Those are your top two in points right now by no small margin either. Heim is, I believe, 40 points behind Eckes, but of course he had that disqualification at Charlotte after initially finishing second. So that was almost a full race worth of points, but he lost from that. So if you give that back to him, he would be almost right there level with Eckes in the top spot. And then the next closest is Nick Sanchez, who has won a couple races of his own, but he's roughly 90 points behind Eckes in the top spot. So we saw it last year. Everybody thought Corey Heim was running away with the championship and was absolutely the top favorite. And then chaos at the end with Carson Hocevar taking his championship chances away, and Heim saying, I'm going to do the same for you, and putting Hocevar into the wall. You just never know what's going to happen in this format. But at this point in time, right here, right now, do you see this as Eckes and Heim versus the field? And if you do, who are you taking in a championship fight? Are you rolling with the two most dominant drivers, or do you think it could be a Sanchez or a Majeski, Carruth, Ankrum, defending champion Ben Rhodes? Are you rolling with the field here?
With the truck series, it's really tough to decipher right now, and it's going to continue to be tough to decipher until we get this very short schedule, which takes long gaps, finally to maybe I guess September or October. But yeah, Eckes and Heim are the class of the field. Roger Carruth had a really good finish here for Nashville, and I think that might be because it's kind of similar to Las Vegas. and having of course, his first maiden win at Las Vegas Motor Speedway at the top of the season has put him in this position. And also, Ty Majeski, the top ranking Ford. Thor Sport is just kind of all over the place, but Ty Majeski is your top performer. Of course, Ben Rhodes is the 2-time champion, which just shows the unpredictability of it all. So for that reason, I really can't lay a finger on who the 4 is going to be. But I surely know that Eckes and Heim will be the 2 dominant trucks.
Yeah, well, to Brandon's point as well, with how the series is staggered, we have a week off for the trucks, and then back-to-back races. Pocono coming up on July 12th, IRP on the 19th, and then almost a full month off. It's not until August 10th that we have the regular season finale at Richmond, and then we'll know what the playoff field of 10 looks like there. So we'll wait and see if anybody can take the fight to Eckes or Heim. In the meantime, kind of want to do a mini open segment here. There was a video that caught my eye from Peter Strada's channel this weekend, Martin Truex Jr. being interviewed. Of course, we recently got the news that he will be stepping away from full-time racing at the end of this season. Truex was asked, being a Cup Series and at the time Busch Series champion, if he would want to compete for a Truck Series championship, much like Kyle Busch has teased the idea of doing at some point in the future. Here's what Truex had to say when asked that question in the media center this weekend in Nashville.
Do you have any interest in potentially chasing the Truck Series title? You'd be the first to win all 3.
Yeah, a lot of people have been asking me that, friends especially, and people in the sport that I've worked with over the years. But as of right now, I'm not running full-time anything next year, so definitely going to take the year off full-time, but never say never. Maybe the year after, who knows.
All right, well, on that note, Brandon, after Kyle Busch, do you think Martin Truex Jr. would be the driver with the best chance of winning a title in all 3 series if he were to take up that opportunity?
I think so. And I think with the relationship he has with Toyota, that's another great avenue into the Truck Series. And being the first one to win on the Bristol dirt in the stat book back in 2021 with his, first start in the trucks and getting the first win. Of course, that's on dirt. That's a different discipline than literally the rest of the calendar for them. But I mean, the truck hasn't changed too much. He's been in the truck seat, and yeah, after Kyle Busch, Martin Truex Jr. is a wheelman, and he would have a great. I think he would have a great fun time in the Truck Series fighting for a championship. And you see the kind of the playfulness in his eyes, like he's like, next year is going to be take a rest year, but never say never. My friends are telling me I should do this. So maybe the right friends will nudge him enough to think, maybe what the heck, let's try it.
I would love to see it. Obviously, I've been on record saying about Kyle Busch. I would love to see now that Brad Keselowski's back in the ownership world with RFK, maybe he could open Brad Keselowski Racing up again or get some support from Jack Roush to do that, and then he could go chase that opportunity. Kevin Harvick, KHI still exists as, a management group for young development drivers. I don't know if that would be something he'd be interested in as well. But, there are a number of drivers that are just missing that truck championship. Greg Biffle tried for years to win that Cup title. He's obviously retired from full-time racing now. Austin Dillon could do it, but given how RCR has been running this year, I feel like the chances of that happening, at least any time in the near future, are pretty slim given his current situation. So I think it would have to be a Cup Series champion and Busch Nationwide Xfinity champion going for this truck title. And to your point, Brandon, a very small sample size. Truex only had 2 truck starts before he won that Bristol dirt race. They were in 2005 and 2006 at Milwaukee and Michigan, respectively, with Billy Ballou's team. So not too much of a sample size to go off of, but we know he's a very good race car driver, and we know that he can get behind the wheel and bring a car or truck to the front of the field and have it contending for wins. I think, when you look at what Kyle Busch does in a truck, he would be the overwhelming favorite, but you couldn't rule Truex out if he got that opportunity. I think still being in his early to mid 40s, I think he's got a window of probably 2 or 3 years where he could say, I'll take some rest next year and only do a couple one-offs. But if he wants to do it in 26 or 27, I think he's got a shot.
Man, why wouldn't you take the chance to make history? I mean, why wouldn't you take that chance? Sure, take a year off, but We know how much a year off does to a driver when they decide to, then it's the process of getting back in the car. I think it's kind of like if you're going to go to college, you need to do it. It's best to do it right when you graduate high school. You don't need to wait. You don't need to let your mind slip a year or two and then decide you want to do it. In that same sort of way. But he's got a really good chance to do it. He's got the friends to help him do it, and I just don't see why he wouldn't take that chance in a couple of years.
Yeah, so we'll see. I think that it would certainly get a lot of people talking, and I think
that was my other point. Like the Truck Series needs something compelling, and this would be, hook, line, sinker, a way to do it. The Truck Series does need something. I hate to say it, it does need something compelling because right now I don't know if it's in the best health.
Yeah, and trucks would certainly bring a lot of that. See, that's the kind of bushwhacking that I would have no problem with. If you're not doing Cup, if you're just saying,
it's not a Cup Series,
let's go for it. Yeah, that's not a Cup invader in my mind. He's running for a championship. More power to him.
He's a truck lifer.
Yeah, at that point in his career, go for it. So I would love to see it. We'll see. All right, we move on now to the ARCA Menards Series. Find the graphic. There we go. William Sawalich, not much of a surprise here. He won yet again in that number 18 Joe Gibbs racing car. But Brandon, a really interesting storyline developing here of ARCA's full-time drivers running for the championship. The top 9 in points who have run every race. None of them have won yet so far this season. Andres Perez has had some close calls. Obviously, LeVar Scott finishing second, was the best of the rest behind the dominant Gibbs 18 car. Chris Wright had a second place finish at Talladega. So we've had a couple of close calls here. But what do you think is going on? Why are the series regulars struggling to win here in ARCA? What is it going to take for a series regular to take the checkered flag? Will they take the checkered flag before the season wraps up?
Because you keep putting drivers with tons of talent and a lot of money behind them with a really beefed up car smoking the rest of the field every weekend that you go out. William Sawalich, he's a phenomenal talent, one of the next big names of the sport. But I hate that we have to keep calling him the rest because they can't win. So you got to take your juggernaut out if you want to see a race where you might actually have an ARCA Menards Series regular take the victory.
Yeah, and I get it. It's certainly a sponsorship driven business, and again, Sawalich would be, I think, if he were old enough and eligible to run for the championship and run the big tracks, he would be the overwhelming championship favorite. But of course, he's only running full time in the East Series with the age restrictions. But you get in this ARCA car on a short track, and you see Sawalich in that 18, and it's almost it's about as much of a foregone conclusion, I think, as Max Verstappen is in Formula One right now. Maybe a little bit less, and obviously Red Bull has lost a little bit of their advantage, I think, on that end of things as well. But really, I think some people have called it the 18 and 20 series because that 20 car is shared with a rotation of drivers. Had Sean Higuerani back with Venturini this week. He finished in third, so a strong run for him. But that car has been in contention to take a lot of wins away this year as well. So, again, really going to be interesting here as the season goes on. Could Andres Perez win the championship without winning a race? Because again, with all due respect to Greg Van Alst, and he didn't lose too much ground this weekend, 7th place to Perez's 5th. But being 40 points back here at this point, only a few points ahead of LeVar Scott, who made up some ground with a strong 2nd place finish. I think those two Rev Racing teammates could finish 1-2 in the championship, no doubt. But are they going to be able to win a race with the likes of William Sawalich and Sean Higuerani, part-timers standing in their way? That I think is a little bit more questionable. So we'll see. Could be an interesting championship fight, especially with so many East combo races still to run as well. That's going to throw a wrench in the title fight in those races on the schedule as well. So we'll see if that how big of a role that plays, rather, when it comes to the ARCA Championship. All right, and finally tonight, we'll go through these real quickly here. We've got Formula 3 and Formula 2 that were in action as well in Austria. Congratulations to Nikola Solov, who took the win in the sprint race. and we'll take you through the rest of the results quickly here. Apologies if the internet is lagging on my end too. It feels like the graphics have been a little bit slow to load tonight as well. But there's the back end of your sprint race results. Luke Browning, the championship winner, or championship leader rather, in the Formula 3 point standings. He took the win in the feature ahead of Gabriel Mini, who was second in the race, second in the championship as well. So your top 2 in points, also the top 2 in the feature race. And then back onto the final third of the results here, 21st through 30th. Unfortunate for Sebastian Montoya being down there in last place. So we'll see if he can rebound from that. In the meantime, let's take you over to Formula 2. In the sprint race, Oliver Behrman finally breaking through, taking the win. It's been a rough start to the season for him. On the F2 side of things, of course, he had a brilliant debut in the Ferrari, replacing Carlos Sainz in Saudi Arabia to take 7th place, and he is still very high up in the Formula 1 points because there are still drivers driving backmarker cars in that series that don't have points yet, or at least don't have as many points as Behrman picked up just from that one race. But good to see him finally get a sprint, an F2 win this year in the sprint race, and championship leader Paul Aaron on the podium there as well. And then in the feature, congratulations to Gabriel Bortoleto, the reigning Formula 3 champion, taking the win there in the feature. Also some news coming out of Formula 2 this weekend. Franco Colapinto, don't know off the top, it finished in second to Bortoleto in the feature race, so a strong weekend for him. But much better news even than that, just from one race weekend's results here. He will get to make his FP1 debut for Williams coming up here, replacing Logan Sargent. So good opportunity for him to show what he can do behind the wheel of a Formula 1 car, as so many young drivers get such an opportunity throughout the year these days. Great to see Colapinto getting that chance coming up here as well. So we'll keep our eye on that. In the meantime, Brandon, let's wrap up the show tonight. What is your one shining moment as we come up here on an even hour for this episode of Encore?
Yeah. Overall, one shining moment for the weekend in Lebanon is just the overall, the most compelling part of it for me was the heat, and just seeing these drivers navigate. I think we take for granted how hot it is in there every weekend, much more so when they come to such a hot weekend. It's 130 degrees in the car. Just overall, that was the most compelling part for me, just watching them navigate that. And Riley Herbst worrying about his vision too, like that was insane to me. And then my one shiny moment is for Jesse Love. He had a huge boost through the field, started in the back of the field and charged all the way, especially at the end of the race, all the way to P3. And even he was very exhausted too. He could barely speak at the end as well. Just a bunch of amazing athletes. And I feel like I haven't been able to see like Jesse Love like on a camera much. Like in my mind's eye, I can't picture what Jesse Love looks like. And I wish that's the same for a lot of Xfinity and Truck Series drivers. I can't exactly picture what they look like, and I wish I could. I wish they were interviewed on TV more, but able to see more of his personality this weekend, just bearing through that interview as well. But that was a really cool charge for him, all the way to P3. My one shining moment.
Yeah, of course, Jesse Love really started out the year strong. A couple of poles in his first 2 Xfinity races. Had to wait a little while to get that win, though, Talladega, but another strong run for him. Just to follow up on that real quick, I was like 95% sure. I didn't want to say it and get it wrong. I was pretty sure it was the British Grand Prix coming up this weekend where Colapinto is going to be making his debut, but I just confirmed that. So just to clarify there, the heat's getting to me a little bit up here, just of Boston here. We're getting into the summer months here and coming up on an hour show. But just to clarify, that is coming up this weekend at the British Grand Prix, but that's going to be happening. I want to give a call to Christian Eckes. Again, it is not very often that you see a driver lead every lap in the top 3 series. We see it frequently at the ARCA level. But to see Eckes go out there and put on an absolute clinic and run a perfect race, really staking his claim as, again, along with Corey Heim, I think a top 2 driver in trucks this year, and certainly one of the 2 championship favorites. So we'll keep an eye on if he can continue that momentum as we draw closer to the playoffs for the Truck Series. And that is it for tonight's Encore show. So thank you all so much for watching. As always, be sure to subscribe to the Grid Network if you haven't already, and make sure you follow us on all of our social media platforms: X/Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Twitch, LinkedIn, Threads, and most importantly, right here on YouTube. Thank you again for 1,000 subscribers. Here's to the next 1,000 as we continue to grow our motorsports media outlet here. And if you really liked what you saw tonight, if you liked what you saw this weekend from Joe and Nicole at Portland, and you want to see more of that, the best way to help us get to the track more often is to consider joining our Patreon, joining Colin Deschelle, Mark, Robin, David, and Matthew in investing in Grid Network to not just help keep us on the air throughout 2024, but to help us get to the track on a more regular basis. That'll only continue to help us expand our coverage for you, the viewers. You can also become a member of the Grid Network YouTube channel, or if you'd rather make a one-time contribution instead, you can visit the Buy Me a Coffee link in the description box below. You can buy a coffee for your favorite on-air talent. Any amount will help us continue to grow our motorsports media outlet. Or if you're watching us live here on YouTube, we now have Super Chats enabled as well. Now, Kobe will be back on Wednesday with Grid Tonight. I am planning on filling in. Hopefully, that'll work out with my schedule. I think Matt is taking a little bit of a break, so I'll be filling in for him. And then I know Josh is going away for bikes in a couple of weeks. So you'll see a little bit more of me on that show coming up here throughout the month of July. So looking forward to working with Kobe on there once again, as I am with Women in Motorsports. Hopefully we'll be back with that show, if not this week, next week, or sometime in the near future. And again, you can stay tuned for more Grid Live coverage as always from the Grid Network this upcoming weekend. And then we'll be right back here in 167 hours with the Encore show next Monday night as well. Brandon, any final thoughts before we sign off for the evening?
Just remember how spoiled we are as NASCAR enthusiasts with this schedule. The second year on a street course in Chicago. Who would have thought we'd be here? And I can't wait to see Shane Van Gisbergen try to defend his maiden voyage, which would be incredible. And also, I'd like to see a full Xfinity race, please. Let's see if the weather will cooperate.
Certainly hope that for the fans as well, because I think a lot of people might have forgotten with how torrential the weather was there last year. There were a lot of concerts and a lot of trackside events that ultimately got canceled, not postponed, not rain shortened. They just got outright canceled, which was a bummer for the fans. I think it was made up for by the fact that we got such a, maybe not in hindsight, unexpected winner, but certainly a very popular winner, and something that we don't see, that we hadn't seen for 60 years, somebody winning on their debut. I mean, you want to talk about what a shot in the arm it would be for Kaulig in a season like this. We'll see if SVG can defend his title at the street race this year. But to your point, Brandon, absolutely spoiled. I remember bringing this point up last year. You've got, it's a shame we don't have a dirt race at Bristol anymore. Actually, I take that back. I do like having the asphalt, or the concrete rather, back.
Get back.
I would like to see a permanent dirt track. That's what I'm trying to say. I like the fact that we had Jonathan Davenport in Cup one week, and then we had Kimi Räikkönen in the Project 91 car at Coda the next, and then we got SVG on a street course. I mean, you could not deny that Cup had the most diverse schedule in the motorsports world last year, and I think they still do in many respects. They certainly would if they could get a dirt race back, but
we need a permanent dirt facility.
Yes, only worded, not advocating for the return of Bristol dirt at the expense of a concrete race. I'm just saying I'd like to see what that experiment looks like at a purpose-built dirt track still, because we still haven't seen that. But
it's okay. You can put your swords down.
Yes. Regardless, looking forward to the weekend coming up here as well. I hope you all are too. And hopefully the weather cooperates. It'd be hard to imagine it being worse than it was last year, although we still ultimately got results in for both races. But hopefully everybody Chicago has a great time. They're going out to the race, and the logistics and organization go off smoothly, and we can get a full weekend of racing in once again here in year two of this street course experiment that I think has gone very well for NASCAR so far. So for Brandon Crossland, I'm Ben Schneider. Thank you all so much for watching. Hopefully Brandon's internet will be a little bit better next week. We'll see you then to recap the Chicago street race. Until next time, have a great night, everyone.